Hello everyone, welcome to Hill Street. Today's story is Rain, Rain, Go Away. If you end up enjoying this story, please leave a like. If you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe, become a resident of Hill Street, and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Now, let's get to this nightmare. When I was a kid, I lived in a small town, and like most small towns, there were stories. I could vaguely describe some of them, and no doubt you would recognize many of them from your own towns. Most of the time, these stories were told, and many people, including myself, blew them off as flights of fantasy, conspiracy theory, or the result of a paranoid mind, until you see them for yourself. In my town, there was a legend that came to be something parents told their children to get them to behave. It was the legend of the Rain Man. Yeah, I know what you're thinking reading this. Oh no, not another Slenderman story. I really wish I could say the same thing after what I saw that night. I was around 9 or 10 at the time my family, mom and grandmother, lived in a rented house in a community of older people. There were very few children my age around, so a lot of the time I would go out and explore my surroundings alone. Unlike a great deal of stories that I have read in the past, I didn't live in a place where there was a huge forest behind my house and things came out of it. No, I lived in what was essentially the middle of town. Each house was no more than 30 feet from one another. However, the street I lived on did have a large power station at the end, and behind that was a huge field that led to our town's flood wall, on the banks of a pretty good-sized river with a train trestle spanning it. It was in this area where I saw it. I remember that night vividly. I had set a trap over by the trestle, hoping to catch myself a rabbit. What I was going to do with one when I caught it, I hadn't thought that far ahead. It was early September, around Labor Day, because I had a 3-day weekend from school at that point, so I could stay out much later than I normally would otherwise. It was just getting dark when I made my trek through that big field and up to the top of the flood wall. I was not in the greatest of shape, so I had to stop to catch my breath. I was bent over, my hands on my knees, and I was taking deep breaths when the wind blew. It was a cold wind that really didn't match the surrounding temperature. But it wasn't the temperature that caught my attention. It was the light sound of what, even now, I can only describe as crystal wind chimes. I stood up and held my breath, straining my ears to hear it again. But for long moments, I couldn't hear anything. Nothing at all. It seemed like everything had fallen mute, lending the deepening darkness an eerie quality. I should have gotten the hell out of there right then and there. But I was an adventurous kid, and I was going to get a rabbit. Self-preservation was not a high priority to me at the time. Despite the ominous feeling that was screaming at me to run away, I pressed on, taking careful steps down the far side of the flood wall to the small paved path that curved around under the trestle. There were thick trees to my left, blocking my view of the river and lending the little path an almost claustrophobic feel in the dark. As soon as I stepped onto the path, another wind blew, again carrying with it the soft tinkle of the crystal chimes. Again I stopped and stood there, straining my ears to hear that sound again. But again, there was nothing at all. I remember thinking to myself, What the actual hell? I stuffed my hands in my pockets and took a few more steps down the path. I was moving slower now, my sense of danger making my steps rather hesitant, but onward I pushed. I came around to the curve in the path where the trees opened up, and I could see the river illuminated by the rising moon. But the river wasn't all I saw that night. There, standing directly under the trestle in the middle of the river on top of the water, was... Thinking back now on what I saw there, even I find it hard to believe. It seemed to be vaguely human-shaped, yet inhumanly tall. It wore, or its body was made up of, from my vantage point, looked like gray, dirty rags. Its arms were spread out to its side, seemingly feeling the air with fingers that looked more like bone-white claws. However it was, its head that caught my breath in my throat. The head was surrounded by what looked like flowing clouds rolling slightly in a wind that touched nothing but the thing in front of me, and through those clouds, its face. My God, its face, I will never forget. It was emotionless, like that of a mannequin, and as sickly white as the belly of a fish. It had no eyes, only black holes that seemed to be staring not at me, but through me. It was then I involuntarily gasped, and its head snapped, really seeing me now. Again, the sound of that tinkling crystal, so much louder this time, rang out. I was paralyzed. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. I wanted to be anywhere but right there then. But I was stuck. The thing then started to move towards me. Not so much walking on the water's surface as gliding above it, as the water below was not disturbed. It was about 30 paces from me when I began to hear it. A childlike voice that seemed to be all around me, saying over and over again, "Go away, come again another day." Its claw-like hand reached out towards me once more. "Rain, go away, come again another day." As it reached in my direction, my paralyzation ceased, and I didn't waste any time. I turned and ran as hard as I ever ran in my life, yet the still incantation, "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day," chased me up the path, over the flood wall, and into the field. I could feel that thing chasing me, whether it was or not. I don't know. I didn't dare look behind me. I just ran all the way home, slamming the door behind me. For a long time after that, years, I was afraid to leave my house alone, and I always slept with my lights on. Even now, 30 years since that day, my heart starts to pound, and I almost have a panic attack whenever I hear, "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day," because I know the Rain Man will indeed come again.